Hello everyone, and welcome to today's BOC Group webinar. Thank you all for joining us. The topic of today's webinar is GRC 2.5 Unboxed. Discover the new GRC suite. To begin with, here are a few quick tips for enjoying the webinar more easily. During the webinar, all participants are welcome to ask questions. Please use the webinar side panel to do so on the right side of your screen. Depending on the remaining time, we then select one or two questions and answer them live. For all questions that go unanswered, we will get back to you post-webinar via email. We will answer anyway. However, we will see how many we get to live. My name is Marin Tikvica. I'm your host today, and I hope you feel comfortable in our virtual meeting room. As an expert on the topic, I would like to greet my dear colleague who's joining me today, Tom Brennan. He will lead you through the content-related part of the webinar. So today, here are some quick highlights and focus. So we will be becoming familiar with GRC, and we will show you how to discover the benefits of integrating risk management into an integrated management system, how tasks can be managed decentrally and assigned to involved users through the use of predefined workflows. We will also learn how audit security is ensured by historization, versioning, and archiving. And also, we will show you how to do so by creating transparency, and we can identify and exploit optimization potential. Beforehand, I'd like to give you a brief overview of the activities of the BOC Group. So the BOC Group was founded in 1995 as a spin-off of the University of Vienna, and today has more than 230 employees in 8 different countries. We sell our products, implementation projects, and consulting services in more than 50 countries, and this is building on the support of a very strong partner network. We are particularly proud that nearly 100,000 active users of our free community editions have registered worldwide. With this proliferation and experience of more than 20 years in IT-based management domains, we now have more than 35,000 installations of our commercial software products in companies all around the world. Our products from the so-called BOC Management Office are primarily aimed at facilitating changes in business and IT. We accomplish this by creating necessary visibility into your process architecture or enterprise architecture that helps you better understand and control change. The portfolio of our products includes the well-known Adonis for business process management and analysis and optimization. We have AdOIT on the right, which is our IT management and enterprise architecture management product, and of course GRC, which is our focus for today, for governance, risk management, and compliance. All of these products conceal a powerful common platform that allows tool users to model processes or architectures, of course create analytics, reports, assess risks, and much, much more, all through a web-based approach. This platform is characterized by very high flexibility in the configuration, and that also allows implementation for very specific customer requirements through customizing. The BOC Group does not leave you alone with the exciting challenges of the digital transformation, even beyond the products, and therefore also offers specialist advice, training, and support. So to speak, we provide everything from a single source. If you're interested in our portfolio, feel free to contact us directly or visit our website for more details at www.boc-group.com. Our international customers, but also renowned analysts such as Forrester and Gartner, have become increasingly aware of us throughout the years, and are positive testimony to the fact that to the developments we have made to date, but also to our future plans. Please take a few moments and browse through the respective reports on your own time. However, I will not stretch this any longer than it needs to be. Tom is prepared to guide you through the topic, GRC Unboxed 2.5. Tom?
Okay, thanks, Marin, for the introduction. I'd also like to have a warm welcome to all attendees from me. So my name is Tom Brennan, and I have been working for over 10 years at the BOC Group as an EA and BPM consultant, and in today's webinar, as Marin said, we're going to introduce some of the new features and highlights of our GRC service version 2.5 in the next 30 minutes or so. So based on the time restrictions, only an extract of the functional scope of the GRC service can be demonstrated today, but for all topics and questions or suggestions that can't be answered during the webinar, my colleagues and I will be more than happy to answer anything by email afterwards. So when we talk about GRC in the BOC group, we're addressing the scenarios around governance, risk, and related scenarios, as well as compliance. But GRC 2.5 represents the latest generation of services based on our new platform from the BOC group, and allows our previously supported scenarios to be taken to a new level, mainly due to the kind of web-based and more decentralized approach. But here at BOC, we have more than 15 years already of experience with integrated GRC systems, and now I would like to give you a brief overview for the upcoming content for today. Okay, so what can you expect from today's webinar? I'm going to firstly explain what motivates a company to design and implement a risk management or internal control system, in addition to legal and regulatory obligations. An active kind of system supported approach allows a more effective design and mitigation of your risks, making it possible to discover and see kind of harmful issues as potential opportunities to improve. So the basis for this is the framework that we have developed at BOC, which is divided into several phases, and by applying the framework we aim to reduce the number of accidents, to use resources more effectively, and to identify and actively control any identified opportunities, resulting in a continuous improvement in the overall corporate performance. So after a quick introduction to the framework, we'll then focus on how we can apply it. I'm going to introduce some selected kind of key features of the GRC 2.5 and demonstrate how you and your stakeholders are supported, and also how you will benefit from their use in each of the phases that we've defined. So after this brief overview of the functions, we'll then take a look at the GRC service in action directly in the tool, using some simple kind of examples and applications. You will see through the live dashboards the different tools and the resources, and how they're made available to your users in a really kind of role-specific and an intuitive way. So you'll see for yourself how the tasks of yourself and also of your employees can be processed basically in a kind of resource saving and kind of transparent and effective way. So with that said, let's get started now. So let's take a quick look firstly at the kind of origins and the development of the GRC topic as a whole. The requirements of our customers are mostly due to a kind of rapidly changing environment, so you want to be proactive in your response to these requirements in order to try and take them as actual opportunities for improvement. So one of the first requirements of GRC could be the need and to ensure that your financial statements are correct. So basically any financial aspects and any protection is really key here. So the protection of the data is kind of brought to the forefront of your activities. So to do so, and it's necessary to then derive the appropriate controls according to the requirements that you have, and really to establish them as the kind of core or the bedrock of your company. So it's necessary really to look at the focus area and to really make sure that you have the people required there to implement the defined controls. But the controls are going to be carried out within the scope of your more operational business activity and any procedures or processes you have, where we can really try and identify potential sources of danger. So by mapping these more operational risks, the threats then become more transparent, allowing an assessment according to the different perspectives that we have, like the likelihood, the impact, or how easy it is to detect them as well. So the scales and methods and ways we kind of do this is quite diverse, but it includes, amongst other options, we've got the evaluation according to the gross or the net principle, or according to more qualitative or quantitative criteria. But the processes of a company are both supported by and automated by IT, so really a transparent documentation of the risk landscape here is also required, as well as its assessment. So another focus will be on the compliance with more legal requirements, so by mapping and operationalizing risks and controls from your compliance area, you'll also be able to benefit from more kind of proactive design options in this domain as well. And then last but not least, it's necessary to define more kind of company specific priorities in terms of assessment. So for example, you could have the ongoing periodic assessment and evaluation of your key risks identified as well. So based on these requirements, different scenarios can arise, such as your internal control system or risk management system. To implement these scenarios, it's necessary to provide certain kind of skills and functionalities. Scoping, for example, defines which risks and controls will be required and how the company should actually work with them. So for example, it's going to be necessary periodically to demand an assessment of all of your risks from the department heads who need to report on the development status back to the management board. So this is the first of the three dimensions of our method. So this allows the combination of the scenarios that you're trying to support as well as the required skills with the help of our defined risks, controls and initiatives then that ties everything together. So the mapping takes place via categorization. So for example, you can have financial, operational, compliance, legal or IT risks. And then another kind of unique selling point of our GRC service is the direct integration of all of the sources of the risks, as well as the implementation of the controls and the initiatives within the company. Okay, so basically where do risks occur? How are they triggered? What controls are defined? Where do the controls take place? How are they implemented? Who is going to be responsible for this? These are all the questions that we can actually answer with the added value of having a self-contained cycle, starting with the identification of the risks up to the anchoring of the defined mitigating controls and initiatives. The elements used in this context are what we call the assets within our method. So they include, for example, the processes, the IT services offered, the infrastructure or the organizational structures, and these assets are the second dimension in our overall GRC framework. So the third and final dimension of the method addresses the procedure we must follow. So in the first step, the risk and control portfolio must be recorded, structured, and the appropriate responsibilities must be defined according to the area of focus. During the evaluation, it's going to be necessary to assess the risk portfolio according to the defined criteria and making sure that all of the controls in place are tested for both their design but also their operating effectiveness. And since it's going to be a kind of a cyclic procedure, so all of these activities are going to be recurring periodically. So the company, you must set up appropriate mechanisms and processes to basically present all of the risks and controls to the involved stakeholders, notify the people responsible, and be able to handle any potential escalations or any issues that arise during the course of the assessment. So the content then is collected first, but then it's cultivated to determine, using our analysis and reporting functions, more kind of educated conclusions on the overall kind of status of all assessments, but also in identifying any possible need for change. So the analysis will form the basis of the information we need for improvement to try and discover any gaps and see what gaps we need to close before the next period, and also the potential to seize any opportunities that are defined based on how we're going to improve over the course of time. So we can then specifically deliver this content really for operating risk or auditing or certification in the necessary structure that you need. And then the procedure model, as I said, it's understood to be kind of an ongoing iterative cycle and shows that the GRC service allows basically the implementation of the various solutions that we're supporting with GRC in an integrated solution with a central repository. So a large number of functions within the GRC service are serving to implement the scenarios we've mentioned. So now we're going to take a quick look at some of the kind of functions before we look at them directly in the tool. So firstly, to support the collection and allocation and basically evaluation in your company, GRC 2.5 offers the integrated risk and control assessment. So in a kind of a matrix view, at the click of a mouse, we can look at all risks and controls assigned to selected group of processes, and it's easily accessible and clearly presented in our specialized matrix view. With this visualization, we provide a good overview, but we can also allow you to link and your risks and control portfolios directly to your processes. Anytime you can see where risks are missing, you can evaluate them, or if necessary, you can plan for a later execution of the assessment. So we can also identify any risks that are missing controls. We can trigger subsequent tests directly from the matrix. We can then begin to evaluate our risks, so it's important for your colleagues and employees to have a real transparent overview of your risk and control portfolios at all times, and to be able to find where there is a need for action. So the redesigned GRC scenario should really be a kind of a central workplace now for any employees involved, providing personalized view of all tasks, all risks, all controls under the responsibility of a specific individual. So it really serves as a kind of a starting point for dashboards which have been tailor-made for the specific tasks in question. We then look to operationalize the risk management. So we've got dedicated workflows that handle all master data, all evaluation data in terms of your risks and controls. And this guarantees that the information is of a high quality for the involved specialists who are required to actually validate the input. So your risk managers will be guided through the risk assessment using kind of simple and comprehensive workflow that's all pre-configured by the service. So the likelihood, the impact and the detection of all your risks will need to be assessed according to the defined kind of audit proof procedure, so that all changes and all comments and anything that happens is historized to provide a nice audit trail for later. So the necessary approval levels of the risk assessments are based on their kind of criticality, how important they are and how critical they are, and range dynamically from 1 to 3 levels of approval. So to mitigate the risks, we need to make sure that your controls are right and that they've been properly tested before and been finally kind of implemented and executed. We need to evaluate their effectiveness by having the people involved perform tests and actually report on the results in terms of the controls design, but also the operating effectiveness. And all workflows have in common that only the authorized employees are allowed to actually maintain the content. So it's really dedicated access rights based on the tasks that need to be performed. And as I said, all changes are historized so that we have an adequate audit trail at the end. But once employees are automatically kind of notified by new tasks by GRC, so it really keeps you on your toes, and the system also handles a good escalation system should any issues arise. But in order to keep track of your constantly growing portfolios, suitable views are really valuable here. So with GRC 2.5, we can use the well-known Gantt view to see a rich kind of graphical view of the current status of all of your risk assessments or control tests. And so it's going to be easy to see the current status, identify responsibilities, and then be able to assign new tasks directly from the Gantt chart in terms of the workflows that are defined. Next up is our reporting phase. So a good report of your risk and control portfolio shows that the right information can be made available to the right people at the right time. So in most cases, your risk and controls need to be broken down into specific business areas, specific areas of responsibility like the organizational units, or they could be related just to the core processes that are involved. So we've got dedicated dashboards in GRC 2.5, which has the ability to then prepare the portfolios in terms of any assets, be they processes, org units, work instructions, or IT systems, to provide a real structured overview so you can quickly identify any need for action to make sure everything is good to go. Lastly, we've got graphical analysis then, which allows you to easily identify any potential opportunities and then share the results with your colleagues for further analysis. So for example, we've got the portfolio presentation of the current risk assessments, which can be used to determine which risks require your urgent attention, and then you can actually take the necessary actions and to also wisely be able to focus the use of the necessary resources. So risks can also be arranged according to their importance, so how easy they are to detect, for example. So with the size of the bubble, we can also visualize and analyze that kind of information. So not only the likelihood, the impact, but also how easy or difficult the risks are to detect, which will let you focus in on the ones that are going to cause you the most trouble. Okay, so before I show you the recent changes directly in GRC 2.5, I'm just going to point out that we've also improved the service in other areas. So some selected highlights include the kind of increased performance of all components, from load time, the structure of the dashboard, and the responsiveness. The workflow related aspects have also been extended, refined, and kind of complemented so that they can be configured to really meet specific GRC needs. The customization options include selecting the specific workflow configurations, how many levels of approval are required. We've got some dynamic parameters, as I said, by kind of importance or by criticality, and it's all built into the dedicated workflows, and how the kind of dialogues and notifications are designed and presented to the involved stakeholders. So there's really a whole host of improvements in the GRC solution as a whole. And as I said today, we're limited with time, so we'll just be showing a kind of a snapshot of some of those today. So now, just without tormenting you with more slides here, I'm going to switch directly into the tool for a live demonstration of the features we've mentioned. Okay, so into Adana, so I have it preloaded here at the login screen. And so for the demo today, I'm going to be using a hosted environment of our GRC service, and the sample content is based on our fictional Adabo Money Bank, which is an integrated sample repository of the BOC group. So now I'm logging in as a power user within the GRC scenario. So those of you who may be familiar with the DONIS already will recognize the three tiles we have for design and document, read and explore, control and release. But the illustrated tiles represent the different scenarios available to my user. So we're going to begin now with the additional, or the new scenario here called GRC, which is aimed specifically at your kind of risk and control officers and provides a clear overview of all current tasks that need your attention. So this is the dashboard that you're presented with. So the central element of the scenario here is the overview of all of your open tasks. So this includes all of your risks and controls for which my logged in user has an open issue to take care of. For example, the evaluation or the assessment of a risk. So we can see here I've got 13 assessments in my dashboard. Over here we can see all pending action items, so we can check out the drop-down list and split it by just risks and controls. So maybe we look at all pending actions that only relate to the risks I'm responsible or involved with. When we see here, we can see all of our risks and some workflow states that the different both risks and risk assessments are in. We can see here in the column state, if we just hover over, we can see what state the current risks are in. They're obviously filtered by state on the left-hand side, so by draft, scheduled, under assessment. And if we click on the little clipboard item here, we can see what workflow or what actions we can perform on this particular risk assessment in this case. So here we could send it on to be performed for a risk assessment, or if I just click on a draft risk, maybe I want to actually release the object. I've checked the details and we can release it here. You can also check your any master data history or any risk assessment history as well directly from the context menu here that we have. In the upper area here of my risks and my controls, we have a structured overview of the user-specific portfolio, so it makes it easy to assess the current status and to basically prioritize all of your upcoming tasks. And we'll see some other options from these two portals at the top a little bit later. And then the lower part of our scenario down the bottom here allows you to directly access the most important functions of GRC. So here we can create some risk controls or assessments or tests, or over here we can analyze, we can directly click on the link to create a control testing portfolio, or FMEA matrix can also be initiated directly from our GRC analysis. This widget over here is our favorites, so we can have favorites either our models or objects, or risks, controls and initiatives. In this case I've got 4 processes here marked as favorites, so we can also have IT systems or documents or products, for example. But I'd now like to make sure at the beginning that I want to check to see that all of my risks are linked to my controls, and we're going to look at an integrated risk and control assessment. So in this view, I'm going to just open up the matrix view here now related to my 4 processes. Directly from the context menu, I can check my matrix here and go to my risk and control process matrix. So we can see here all the risks that are assigned to my key processes, or at least my favorite processes, and I'll also see which controls are there to mitigate the risk. So from this view, I can really at a quick glance see where there are any weaknesses or maybe potential need for action. So we can see here our processes, we've got our controls and our risks that are associated to our processes and the mitigating controls. We can also switch the view here to look at it from a heat map perspective, so we also can visualize the value at risk. And so this results from the probability or likelihood of occurrence together with the impact of the detection. So basically, the darker the cell is colored, the more critical the value at risk. So we can see here that this one is slightly darker colored than here, so this is the more critical risk in this case. But thanks to the visualized information, we can see that one of my processes currently has no risk associated, and this basically tells me that, okay, what's the process? It's about consulting with new customers, so maybe we've got some data protection regulations that isn't being taken into account in terms of risk. So we can jump directly to our Object Explorer, so we know that there's a suitable risk which has already been defined about the breach of privacy. So we can drag our risk directly from the Object Explorer into our matrix here, and it will then see if it has already been associated with any processes. If not, it will appear directly here in my no references, so there's no current process references to this risk. We can already see the value at risk, so there has been some of the parameters have been defined. So just give it a second here to load into the matrix. Again, I'm working just here from a kind of a hosted environment, so in a test environment, not directly on my machine, so it's taking a little bit of time just to load. Just give it a second. But now we can automatically from here drag and drop our risk into the to assign it to the process that we would like to assign it to. So in this case we can drag the risk up to our prepare and conduct consultation for business customers. So then once we drag it into the cell, it will become referenced. And now since I added the new process or the asset, so it's a process in this case, but it could be another asset like an IT system or a document or a product, for example, the risk could be related to. But I'd now like to ask my colleagues in charge to reassess this risk, so I can trigger the risk assessment workflow directly from the matrix using this context menu. So here we see there's a risk assessment already defined for the breach of privacy, and we can submit the risk to be assessed by whoever is responsible for it. So in the background, basically a new workflow period has started. We get the success message down the bottom. The history is written in as an audit trail, and the corresponding colleagues are going to be informed by a notification in Adonis through their original dashboard. But we can also set up emails to be sent to the involved stakeholders as well. So now I'm just going to jump back to the GRC scenario. So since in my example, my user here is my user called all, so I'm responsible for, I've got access to all kind of roles for handling all of the assessments, and I can do all of the activities. So we can see here that the breach of privacy now has popped into my under assessments dashboard here, so I can see that there's some actions that we need to do. So the new task is listed, but I want to see, so this is just my high-level overview to see which assessments I need to take care of. But I can also look into a more detailed view, so this is just letting me know that I have a task. And we now see my assessments. If I just jump into my assessments and refresh the view here, we also get a more detailed view here. So we can drill down from the GRC dashboard in to look at my risk assessments, and we can see all my risk assessments now by state, together with some more information about their previous assessments, so the likelihood, the impact, the detection, the value at risk, the frequency, when was the last assessment and when the next assessment is scheduled for. Again, I can trigger the evaluation of the risk using either a special menu here from the actions, so we can click on the actions to perform it, or I can just right click on the new assessment, go to my GRC workflow, just give it a second to load there, and now I can actually perform the risk assessment as well. So once I go to perform the risk assessment, this dialog appears which displays all of the information relevant for the evaluation. So we've got some specifications and guidelines at the top, which comes from the generic risk, and it also assigns the evaluation values based on the previous period. So we can see in the assessment what the previous evaluation was. So again, your employees and colleagues can be provided with this information needed for the current task at any time and any place due to the web-based access and the more decentralized approach. So you can also see who is responsible for the methodical review, the review, and then the final review by the supervisor before the assessment is released. But to get a better overview, so that's just one individual risk assessment, but to get a better overview of the status and the validity of all assessments, we can select one here and then select all of our risk assessments. So again, you can either use the context menu here to create a Gantt view. So we look at the state of all of our risk assessments. So here we can see, just by extending out here, looking at the overview of the all of our risk assessments, which is a little bit a nicer view in terms of the specialized Gantt view, because it just visualizes all of the workflow states of the selected risk assessments. But it's now possible to see quite quickly the status of all of the risks and whether there's a need for any kind of organizational action. So maybe people are ill or on vacation and something has been scheduled which hasn't taken place already. But even directly from in here in this view, you have the context menu again to automatically work on the GRC workflow and submit the risk assessment for assessment. You can pause the workflow or create a new version if something has changed. So everything is available directly in this Gantt view as well. And with these views, it's also possible then to publish or share the information, so we can export this view directly as an Excel file or a PDF or as an image, which is also useful to share with some colleagues who may not have access directly to Adonis either. So let's just go back to our review dashboard. So in addition to the Gantt view, we've also got other view types available. So I want to show you another specialized view for an easy evaluation of the portfolio. This time we're going to use the little button up here to create a matrix view, which is our risk assessment, failure modes, and effects analysis. So in this case, we can see in the view on the vertical axis how often our risk occurs, so what's the likelihood of it occurring. On the horizontal axis, we can see its impact, and the size of the bubble again illustrates its detection status. So risks that are going to be classified in the upper right hand corner here, so like the one here, the employee health and safety rules, and these are going to be the most critical since they're either may urgently require some form of action, but even we have another risk here which haven't actually been assessed yet. So these are really important in terms of their assessment, because at the moment we know the risk exists, but we don't know what the impact will be. So the company is kind of flying blind in terms of the risk. So, but we can look directly from here and automatically from the GRC workflow start the process again. We can submit it for assessment, so you can check the view, see if there's a need for action, and then actually kick it off directly from the view. So now I'd like to just move into the last part of the demo. So I'm going to switch away from now being a risk manager, and I want to look at our reader portal. So the reader portal again can be structured according to any kind of business area. So we just need to close all of our views here, open up the reader portal, and I'm just going to switch off the filter here. So these views are primarily directed to and designed for kind of team leaders or department heads who only need an overview of the kind of sources of danger or the mitigating controls filtered by their kind of business area or by their responsibility. So in the Read and Explore here, we've got our My Risks portal. So for example, we can take a look at all of the risks that are in my processes. So again, it's related to my user. I'm still logged in as the same person, but we can now see in this dashboard that the risks that are occurring in the processes, either where I'm participating or that I'm responsible for. And so the risks are grouped again according to the processes that, as I said, I'm responsible for or involved in. And you can really see quite clearly if there's any adequate controls here. Here we can see individual controls listed, or if there's more than one, we can just hover over the number and see which controls are there. And again, GRC functions can also be kind of kicked off directly from here as well. Another representation would be from an organizational perspective, so from a responsibility perspective. So we can see which responsible organizational units are there, and we can even look directly at the kind of organizational level as well to see which organizational units I'm involved in. So we can look at the parent organizational unit or even look down into any sub-organizational units as well. So again, it just filters all of the org units and which risks are associated together with the responsible org unit here as well. And we've got one other view here within My Risks. We can look at from a catalog view, which just shows you all of the risks that we have, which could also be then visualized maybe in a tabular view as well. So we can look at all of the risks as they relate to any of the assets like our documents or IT systems or products. So with that, I'd like to come to the end of the actual live demonstration. I hope you could get a good overall impression of GRC 2.5 with these small examples. So now I'm going to just jump back to the slides to conclude my part here. So I just want to emphasize again that in the development of GRC 2.5, we've really focused our development based on our customer kind of requirements and feedback over the years. So the insights that we've received has really laid the foundation for the new features which provide enhanced capabilities in the address scenarios and really trying to provide value for all of the different stakeholders involved from your organization. So I hope we've been able to give you an interesting look at GRC 2.5 in the last 30 minutes or so. And we invite you to check out all of our other content on our website, like the audit readiness webinar, or we can also arrange a more personalized one-to-one demo by contacting BOC to do so. So with that, I'm going to pass you back to Maren. So thanks a lot, Maren, I want to thank everybody for their participation today. And I'm going to pass back now to Maren, who will conclude today's webinar. So thanks again, Maren.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you for that very interesting presentation. We'll now take a quick look at some upcoming events. So here are some BOC Group webinars and events that are coming up, including some that are already available. So to begin with, we have some thematic on-demand webinars that you can access on our website. For example, we have the Getting Started with ICS and Risk Management, Success Factors for Implementing Governance, Risk, and Compliance in your organization. We also have Getting Audit Ready, some quality management and BPM, a very interesting newly topical EU General Data Protection Regulation implementation with Adonis, as well as some Getting Started with BPM. On top of this, we also have a variety of useful articles and webinar recordings that are already waiting for you in our online library, which you can also find on our website. On the 13th of September, we have our 19th Strategic Partner Meeting coming up, and this will be a very, very interesting event. Combination of thrilling best practice lectures, interactive workshops, and some tool demos will facilitate a 360-degree view of BOC's innovative solutions. So with that, I would like to outro and conclude this webinar. Again, for all remaining questions, we'll gladly answer by email. I'm very happy to see so many of you joining us today, and I hope we were able to meet your expectations. Please do not forget to subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about free events and, of course, other interesting news. And, well, it gives us great pleasure to receive your feedback on this webinar, so you will receive an email from us in the coming days that will ask you for your opinion, which we would love to hear. Therefore, on behalf of Tom and I, we wish you all a very pleasant day and see you next time.